chatting.
Yeah. Are you happy to introduce yourself? Maybe?
I am, yes. I have an introductory slide.
Oh,
Yes, wonderful. I'm going to use the mouse because I don't have a clicker thing, so we're going old school. Wonderful. So, yes, this is my Swift and Ceredigion talk, and I've automatically messed up by using my mouse, which is
Is that going to be awkward for you bending down?
because now I'm going to press the button, and everything will be fine because I just pressed the wrong button.
It makes us all feel better.
yes, it does.
Oh my goodness, yeah, I can't. Technology and I don't really get on all that well. But yes, thank you for inviting me to speak today. I am Naomi. I'm here on behalf of Ceredigion Swift Project, which is a sort of a brand new project. We haven't even been going a year yet. We were kind of formally established earlier in the year, and we are looking out for swifts in the county. More information in the presentation. So today, I think what we'll be looking at mostly is sort of starting off with the importance of conservation when it comes to helping out wildlife, why birds are in trouble, as I'm sure many of you already know, what are swifts, for those who aren't aware, who are Ceredigion Swift projects and what we do, and then finally what everyone can do to help swifts in our homes, in our gardens, parks and green spaces. So, I'm Naomi, hello. Some of you might know me, some of you might not. I have lived in Aberystwyth for a while. You can't see that at all. It says Aberystwyth University graduate. Then it says passionate bird watcher. Oh dear. This is the problem of writing things on your laptop versus on the side. British Trust for Ornithology County Representative, so they are the main sort of charity that work with doing bird science. So not quite the RSPB, they don't necessarily work on reserves, they look about surveying birds, doing numbers. Anytime you hear on the news about bird numbers falling or rising, it's numbers from the BTO that are informing that science. And I lead the odd bird walk. This was me leading a bird walk at Llanafan for Pen Park Wildlife Forum. I love leading bird walks and things like that. I'm also a professional ecologist as my day job, so 3 days a week I'm out doing either bat stuff, bird stuff. I saw the bat boxes and I'm like, yes, win for bats. So that'll be fantastic. And then another passion of mine is doing conservation. So I do a lot of voluntary work, mostly with the RSPB, the BTO and the wildlife trusts, because we're on a bit of a border between Montgomeryshire and Ceredigion. I work with both Monts and Ceredigion Wildlife Trust as well. So I work as a nest recorder voluntarily, and I also do bird ringing. And I managed to tick a massive thing off of my bucket list this year, because this is me ringing the ospreys at Derby Osprey Project. I've been waiting 10 years for that to happen. So that was an absolute dream made of mine. So that's the sort of thing that I do and sort of where my interest lies. And so the reason that I am so interested in conservation is because I think at the moment we're kind of bombarded by a lot of negative news when it comes to biodiversity crisis, climate crisis, eco-crisis, and you kind of think, where do we even go with that? Very easy to get a bit depressed, a bit downhearted, but what we have found and what scientists have found is that active conservation efforts actually do make positive change. So all little things that people can do for wildlife do make positive change that is measurable. And so that is why I do it, that is why I love it. Because birds are in trouble at the moment. So this is the most recent copy of the Birds of Conservation Concern. So this is kind of an official publication that pulls together lots of different bird statistics to look at how bird populations are doing. And so the first Birds of Conservation Concern came out in 1996, and it's sort of ranked on a kind of traffic light system. Green, your bird population's doing okay. Amber, ooh, a little bit concerning there. Red, they need help immediately. And unfortunately, the amount of birds in the red just keeps on going up. And so this is our current red list. There are 70 species on it at the moment. Probably things that you'll recognise, things like skylark, very famous bird, sort of losing their population at the moment. Birds that are new to the green list, things like greenfinch, seem to be struggling at the moment, so they're new on the red list. Things like cuckoo, I'm sure we all know of hearing quite a lot of cuckoos a couple of years ago, sort of less so much now. And also birds like the swift. So you've got quite a lot of different birds there. So why are so many birds in trouble? Lots of different reasons, but I've picked out sort of the main four. So we're looking at lack of natural food due to changes in habitat, pesticide use, lack of insects and berries and natural fruit. A loss of habitat, whether that be through intensive agriculture, intensive development, or just not necessarily managing the land in the right way for wildlife. Also disease. I picked a picture of a greenfinch here, because not cleaning bird feeders is a very easy way for birds to get sick as they move around to people's different bird feeders, sort of spreading disease. And then loss of nesting sites as well. That's a really, really big one, because if birds can't breed, can't improve their population numbers, it doesn't matter whether they have a disease-free life, loads of food and loads of habitat. If they've got nowhere to breed, they're stuffed, essentially. And whilst these four things can seem like quite insurmountable obstacles, actually, loss of nesting sites is something that everyone can contribute to halting in terms of its negative effects on birds. So I wonder how many of you have got one of these 3 bird boxes, either in your garden or you know someone who has them in their garden? Fantastic. Brilliant, that's great to see, because these are such easy ways that you can help wildlife. So I mean, I've got a great tip, but I've got tip boxes in my garden. Interestingly, was used by tree bumblebees this year, so something a little bit different. And barn owls are another favourite of mine. But all of these birds, thankfully, they're all on the green list. So these guys are all doing pretty well. So what about birds that are on the red list? What about our house sparrow? What about our swifts? They are, you know, on the red list, they're not doing as well. Whereas house sparrows, they're fantastic. They can rock up in pretty much any nest they like. They'll probably take over the great tit nest once the great tit has finished with it. But swifts are a bit different. They require a different sort of nest. So traditionally, before humans came along, swifts would traditionally nest in trees. So think rot holes from where limbs have fallen off, old woodpecker holes, things like that. In the cairngorms up in Scotland, there is a small population of swifts that do nest in the Scots pine still. That's something I'd absolutely love to see, because I've never seen one in a natural nest. Then of course humans came along, started building things, and so now swifts have had to adapt to that, and they make use of quite a lot of different crevices in our houses, buildings, bridges, other structures like that. This is a lovely picture of a swift, sort of utilising a hole that's been made by some expanding foam coming away. And so they will hop into that little cavity to raise a brood. So before I go on any more about swifts, I think it's about time we learned a little about them. And I brought a friend. This swift was rescued from a Victorian taxidermy case. Yeah, so he's a little bit old, a little bit battered, and if you're not too squeamish, I was going to pass him around. He's a bit delicate, but he is robust.
Upstairs.
Yes. So the common swift, Latin, well, the scientific name is Apus apus, from the Greek for a pod, which means no foot. Because when you look at a swift, when you see a swift flying, and back in the day, they used to think that swifts didn't have feet, because they're one of the very few birds that will actually spend the majority of their life on the wing. And so when they're up in the sky, they do look black, but they're actually a very, very dark chocolate brown, apart from this lovely little white chin. And that's really, really prominent when they've been having a couple of hours feeding, and it's really full of insects ready to feed to their chick. And there's no difference between the sexes, well, in terms of just having a look, and they are predominantly insect eaters, and they are, as I said, one of the very few birds that will eat, sleep, and even mate on the wing. So the only time that they will have their feet actually touch solid ground is when they enter a nest box to bring up their young. That's it. From that point, they are on the wing. It's absolutely phenomenal. So they utilise natural currents in our atmosphere to kind of just bob along. They shut off half their brain to sleep. It's absolutely fantastic stuff. So swifts have been around for quite a while. Nobody want to come in? No. The oldest known fossil swift was 49 million years old, so they've been around on the earth for quite a while. In the UK, we have the common swift, that's the one that breeds here, but we do have sometimes summer visitors, especially about this time of year when birds are migrating, the alpine swift from Europe. Now, this bird, very strikingly similar to the swift with the sort of the scythe-shaped wing, but it's got a very obvious white belly patch. And it's a little bit bigger as well. So that's the sort of thing that me and the Bird Watchers WhatsApp group kind of waiting for at the moment. One flew over Aberystwyth University last year, I think it was, and I missed it by about half an hour. And so, yeah, that was a little bit annoying. But as you can probably tell by the way that their wings, in terms of their body shape, their wings are absolutely huge. And this allows them to be extremely manoeuvrable in the air. They can sort of manoeuvre their wings in terms of how splayed their feathers are, how splayed their tails are. So they can use it a bit like a brake, a bit like a plane does. When they're entering the nest box as well, they will open their wings completely, open their tail, and that will sort of stop them in mid-air as they approach their nest. Absolutely wondrous things to watch when they're in the sky. And they also have other amazing adaptations as well. So their large mouth there is for scooping up insects in flight. They kind of just fly around with their mouths open whenever they're around some insects. Their very large eye is obviously useful for when they're flying around trying to find prey. And their massive wingspan as well, not only it means that flight is less energy intense for them, it means they can manipulate those air currents for easier flight. Now, they don't actually have any close relatives in the UK. Even though they look very similar to swallows and house martins, they're actually more closely related to things like nightjars, and this is an owlet nightjar. We don't get them in the UK. I don't even think we get them in Europe. But things like nightjars, and you can see that similarity with the really big mouth there. I think that swift's going for a little drinky, or maybe try and catch some insects above the water there. So I thought I'd pick up on this because this is one of the things that I've noticed has caused a little bit of confusion when it comes to people identifying what sort of birds they have around them. So these are our 4 high-flying aerial birds, all insect eaters, all summer visitors. I'm sure we get all of them in Ceredigion, we get all of them around here as well. So when we start with Mr. Swift, as we said before, it appears completely black. The wings are very scythe-shaped, very large wingspan in proportion to the body, and it has a forked tail but with no tail streamers. And they nest in enclosed spaces, so they don't make their nests like swallows or like martins do. Swallows, very iconic summer bird, one of my favourites. Black on top, white underneath, completely white belly. Much daintier than swift. I find swifts quite blocky when they're in the sky. I think they look a bit like paper dollies, just sort of flying around in the sky. Their wingspan is smaller in proportion to the body compared to the swift, and their forked tail, classic dainty streamers as well. In swallows, the males have longer streamers than the females. People think that might have something to do with how the females choose their mates, but not entirely sure. And they nest in open cups, but in enclosed structures, so porches, quite a lot in openings in churches. I can't remember the word for it now, but yeah, porches and things like that. They like to have a little bit of cover. Barns, another name for them is the barn swallow, because they're obviously very attracted to those sorts of structures. The martins as well. These 2 birds are incredibly similar because they are related. So our sand martin is actually brown, has white underneath. House martin's black with white underneath. The sand martin has a band across the chest. I remember it as sand with a band. So if you see a martin with a band across its chest, then you know it is the sand martin. They're both quite a stocky bird, can look quite triangular in the air. They're very small forked tail, and they do have different nesting requirements as well. So sand martins will often nest in holes in banks, especially on riversides, whereas house martins will nest in cups. And they're not too fussy about going undercover. Something like a roof eave or a soffit or something will be fine for them. But they make their own nests as well. And so these 4 birds are a fantastic example of convergent evolution, where although these birds aren't related in terms of their genetics, because of their lifestyle, because of the way they eat and the way that they move, they've adapted their bodies to essentially do the same things, but look slightly different. And I think that's fantastic. That's one of the things I like to always talk about whenever I do school classes or things like that. So swifts, as you probably know, they spend most of their winter in Africa. They'll be there already. So this is a bit of tracking data done by the BTO. And they recorded swifts moving from the UK all the way down to their wintering grounds in Central Africa. And they actually found out that the swifts will move differently on the way down as to the way up. Not entirely sure why. It probably has something to do with air currents. But they can make this journey in a matter of days, depending on the weather. And this yellow band on the right there is the movements that they actually make in Africa when they're there in the winter. So not only are they doing that massive migration every spring and every autumn, they're also moving through 2 or 3 countries of Central Africa as well. So these are birds that have a lot of air miles under their belts. So very, very impressive for such a small bird. So once they're back in the UK, they'll begin breeding in late May, and they congregate in big screaming parties. One of my favourite sounds of the summer is listening to swifts screaming around. And so they have a very, very simple nest. They will find something a bit like just a little natural divot or something like that, and they'll use shards of grass, bits of feather, and their own saliva to sort of make a very rudimentary cup in which they'll lay 1 to 3 eggs. Now their young stay in the nest for about a month, weather depending. So if it's a very, very good year, they will fledge quicker. If it's a bit rainy, it'll take a little bit longer. Now these chicks, as soon as they fledge, once they leave the nest once. And they don't, not like blue tits, they don't come back in the evening or whenever they fancy a little bit of food. Once those chicks are out of the nest, they will not put their foot down on the ground until they come back to breed either the next year or maybe even the year after. So those birds can be in the air for maybe 2 years or more and not actually have their feet touch solid earth, which is just, I can't even fathom that. It must be just an amazing lifestyle. To think what they must do in their lives is fantastic. And so once they do come back, they will meet up with each other. We call these communal birds. So although they don't necessarily have lifestyles together, they know each other and they will talk and communicate with each other. And so this is a fantastic clip of a screaming party. I'm going to hope that the audio works. So that will be multiple families of swifts going round and round. I snagged this off of YouTube because I thought it was a really good example, because along here are all swift boxes. Oh. So this is probably a house where there are quite a few different families nesting. The youngsters, when they come back, so the youngsters, the birds that were born previous year, they will come back slightly later than the breeding adults. And what they do, they don't come back with the feeling that they're going to breed. They come around being like, okay, what nest site can I pick? What real estate can I set my eyes on? And so having nest boxes laid out in that sort of way is really beneficial for them, because they'll be like, oh, I can just go next door to Jeff. Oh, this is a nice spot. And so we try and encourage people to take as many swift boxes on their house as they possibly can. But screaming parties, one of my favourite sounds, and sadly missing from a lot of our towns and cities at the moment. So swifts, unfortunately, are in trouble. There is a reason they are on the front cover of the Birds of Conservation Concern, because their population has pretty much crashed in the past 30 years or so. So this is the long-term trends from 1994. Again, probably not the best colour. I shall try and remedy that for next time. But almost a crash in terms of their population. So UK-wide, we're looking at a 60% reduction in their numbers since 1995. But in Wales, it is 72%, which is, you think, almost 3/4 of the swifts that we had here when I was 3 years old, gone, which is astounding to me, and really, really quite sad, actually. I think we feel like we're maybe missing something that should be there. A part of ourselves is our wildlife. We're not separate from it. They are part of us and part of our ecology as well. So when we see swifts utilising these sort of cracks and unwanted bits in houses, I imagine if you were a homeowner, maybe that was causing a little bit of a leak, like, it's fine, I'll just patch that up. But then, where does the swift go? And unfortunately, that is what happens every one house, every other 3 houses. It slowly builds and builds and builds. So what can we do? What can I do? What can you do to help swifts? Well, thankfully, they're very helpful when it comes to helping themselves, is they will use artificial nest boxes. So that is one of the many different types of artificial nest box that you can get. And they will, once they found them, they will use them year after year after year. They are site faithful, so pairs will come back to the same box. Their youngsters will come back to the same area, look for nests that are around their parents, follow the screaming parties. So it's essentially like they're being guided into utilising new and fresh nests. So, what I did last year when I was chatting to someone from the council, they said, Naomi, I have a little pocket of money from the Ceredigion Local Nature Partnership, and it would be great if we could start a swift project in Aberystwyth. Do you know anyone that would be interested in leading it? And I said, oh yeah, no, I'll think about it, I'll see if I can find someone. And that turned into, you are now leading the swift project for Ngheredigion. I said, that is completely fine. So we were awarded some money from the Ceredigion Nature Partnership, which is funded by the Welsh Government, and set up the Ngheredigion Swift project. So we were given about £5,000, and that covered all of our equipment, so all of our boxes, but all drills, ladders, a little bit of health and safety training, and we were able to buy about 70 boxes. So we bought from this absolutely wonderful chap named John, who has made 50 boxes for us. Now John is retired, and John spends his time making boxes. He makes about 2,000 a year for lots of different swift projects, and he sells them incredibly cheaply. I think one box costs about £25, which is absolutely cheap as chips, really. And so this is our sort of what we call our bog standard model here. So it sits on the wall like that. Little swift goes in this hole here. This is a UPVC roof, which, because it's white, which means it will reflect the sun's rays so the swift doesn't get too hot. And inside there is sort of an artificial nesting chamber there, so the swift knows to sort of poodle in and start building its little nest in there. And one thing that I quite like about these nests as well, and some people don't, but I do, is that the elongated nest shape is actually preferred by sparrows as well. So you will find quite a lot of sparrows using these boxes. Some people think that's a little bit, oh, we wanted swifts. So we do offer to bung the holes so sparrows don't use them, but personally I think, you know, all birds need our help. So the small hole, some boxes will also have the hole underneath there. These are the ones that we have been putting up, and we've put up about 30, I think. We had to stop when it started, when it turned into the summer, because that's when my job starts getting very, very busy. So I think it was in March and April we managed to put up about 30 boxes, and we're going to start doing that again same time next year, once the winter storms have done what they do, because I'm not getting up a ladder to put a box up to have it blown off again. So we are incredibly lucky that also we're been given access to Swift record data from the local environmental record centre. Again, not the best image there, but essentially different coloured dots means different amounts of swifts in different locations. Because we thought, we don't want to be just building up these boxes anywhere, because swifts are communal. They'll want to nest with their friends, they'll want to nest where other swifts are. So we thought, where can we best put, where can we get the most bang for our buck in terms of trying to get swift records? So then we thought, let's try and be a bit pragmatic about it. So we came up with the zoning. So we're kind of working in about 4 zones. So zone 1 means you have a swift nest on your house, near your house, on your street, something very similar. Zone 2, you're within about 500 metres, a kilometre of an active nest that is known. Zone 3, you're in about a kilometre of an active swift nest, or you've got a screening party near you. And then zone 4 is you have no screening party, you don't even know if you've got swifts. Not sure. Because of the amount of interest that we had over 110 people apply to get a box. Unfortunately, we had to drop it down from, we were going to do all 4 zones, but we had to drop it down to just zones 1 and 2 to start with. But we're hoping that once all of our boxes are out, we might get a little bit more funding, and then we can expand that a little bit more. So yeah, so at the moment we're kind of focusing on areas that already have Swifts. So we've done quite a lot in Aberystwyth, Cardigan, where else? Averiron. Pretty much anywhere there's a sort of a little urban hub, you get Swifts. I think again it's because they're utilising structures quite a lot.
Naomi, do you know what zone we're in?
In here, I would think you're probably zone 3, but it's either zone 3 or zone 2. I need to look into it a little bit more, because I know there's a chap in the house over there that's had Swift boxes up for a while, not had any interest, but we're also putting in speakers which will play the noise of the screaming party and actually brings the birds in. So that's what I've been trying in my garden in Aberystwyth. There are birds nesting at the top of town. I'm trying to draw them in because I've got 3 boxes on my flat now. And the caller has succeeded in bringing them within about 10 foot of the garden. They might not like it because it's a little bit urban. We're testing things out. We don't know what's going to work or what's not. We're just trying as much as we can, really.
If you've got like house martins, does that put the Swifts on?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay.
No. So they will nest side by side. Some people, they've even managed to make Swift boxes that also have house martin cups underneath. So you've got lots of birds sort of hanging out together. Yeah, generally, absolutely not. They'll work together. So we've been really, really fortunate that we had a lot of take-up almost instantly. If anything, it was a little bit overwhelming because everybody wanted a box. I think I used the word free, and that might have been a mistake. But so this is me putting up some boxes in a house in, I can't remember where that is, but this is down in Talabont. So we know that Talabont regularly has screaming parties, and so this is a friend and colleague of mine, Fionn, who now owns 3 lovely Swift boxes on her property too. And as well as working with individuals, we're also trying to work with landlords, property development companies. Because I'm in Aberystwyth and I rent, it's a way that we can sort of try and manage the best for wildlife. So this is myself and Brian, who is kind of, he's the guy who manages my flat, happens to be my friend's dad, which is just extra big win. And they donated about £1,000 worth of Swift boxes to put up on their properties around Aberystwyth. So this is on the mural by Llanafan roundabout, and we installed a couple of Swift boxes up there. And as well as that, we are hoping that, because CBW also does property development, we are trying to convince them to install Swift bricks in their properties. So rather than going up a ladder, risking life and limb to put a box really super high up, why not just put holes in the actual house to begin with? So these are Swift bricks, so they're a completely enclosed unit. It's very similar design to the top there. If you can peek inside, you can sort of see a little nest cup there. But they weigh, I think, probably even less than a regular brick. And you can put as many of those in your house as you want. And not only are those good for swifts, they have been used by swallows, they've been used by house martins, bees, bats, all sorts of things. So as much as they're called a swift brick, they're pretty much just a wildlife brick.
And so how much are those then?
Those are about £30 to £35 a unit, which actually, when you're thinking about housing development costs, peanuts, absolute peanuts. And so there are lots of different designs here. This one, I think, has a UPVC plastic front, because lots of developers are trying to get on this. In England, these will go towards your biodiversity net gain score. What I do as an ecologist, whenever someone's making improvements to their house, this is always something that I'll put in the recommendations, because per Planning Policy Wales, you have to have a net benefit for nature, so that's something that I can always pop in and say, look, easy win, just stick one of those in there and you're golden. So that's one of the things that we're trying to work on, trying to approach a few more companies and trying to get them on board. Because I know a couple of the very, very large developers, you know, like Barrett's and things like that, they're now slowly adopting them, but it would be great if we could get...
I think Redrow have just agreed to do it as well.
Yeah.
All their new properties in England, Redrow.
Yeah. So we think it's such an easy thing that can potentially makes such a big impact, because you think one swift can raise 3 chicks every year, and that will slowly build and build and build.
You need more than one Brit though, don't you? You want, if they're coming back in families and groups,
Generally,
you want to have more than one.
I always suggest at least 2 per building.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's, you know, they've said yes to something now, so it'll be kind of like, yeah, put 5 up, put 11. It'll be, I'd love it. There's I've seen them where they have them in a kind of a triangle down the gable, so you have about 6 or 7 on each side, and I just think that's perfect. Because that mirrors sort of a natural cliff face, or a tree that has loads of woodpecker holes in it. Fantastic. And so not only can we provide nesting, we can also provide food, because not everybody's doing a property development, I understand that, but pretty much all of us either have access to a garden or a small green space, or a green space that we can influence the management of, be that a churchyard, a schoolyard, or something similar, or even just having a window box. You can grow native pollinator plants that will increase insect diversity, which in turn is food for swifts, food for swallows, food for house martins, bats. All the birds, all of our biodiversity will benefit from having better planting and creating better spaces for wildlife.
Can I just ask, oddly, we have a small bathroom. It always gets super steamy, so we open the window. And this year, for the first time ever, the amount of bugs that have come in, is this to do with the lack of birds? Like not just your normal like moths or spiders, like little tiny bugs. And I'm like, I went into the bathroom and I'm like, oh my god, what the heck? Actually terrifying.
So I've noticed,
Interesting.
interestingly,
I'm like, why is there so many?
the big bugs
You didn't see it.
that need caterpillars, so things like the butterflies, the moths, haven't been doing so well this year because they've been rained off. Smaller insects that rely on small pools of stagnant water as part of their life cycle, so gnats, midges, mosquitoes, have massively benefited this year because it's been so wet. It's been wet, it's been mild, and that is exactly what they need in order to... I'm being besieged by mosquitoes at the moment because I have my water butts because, you know, last year it was super dry for 2.5 months and I had no water. I was like, I'll put loads of water butts out this year, and then it just rained the whole time. So maybe to get good weather, I won't put them out next year, and then...
I mean, obviously we live rurally, we get bugs, but I have never seen that many accumulate, ever.
And I think the fact that your room is nice and steamy as well, they're thinking, ooh, warm, moist, humid, that's going to be great for me to lay my eggs, or, you know...
Oh, he was there with the Hoover. I'm not even joking.
Goodness me!
They had to do something, he was like... They were everywhere. They were on the floor, on the ceiling, on the walls, in the bath. It was gnats, it was moths, it was spiders, it was... I don't even know what some of them were.
He's not who
You don't do the spiders.
The big ones
Yes.
cut out the window.
Oh.
But there was, you know, as many as he could, but I kid you not, it was like a jungle in it. It was really frightening.
Wow!
Well, me on the other hand, I've usually used 5 fly papers. I haven't even had to put one up this year.
Now you say that, I haven't either.
No, it's a massive
And my bees, we
change.
won't have any honey this year.
Yeah.
They're starving. We're feeding them. Started feeding them months ago.
Is it not better now, because we've had some decent weather, haven't we?
They love the mickle
A little bit.
spaces.
Have they not come back a bit? You know, we've got a bit of honey.
Sorry, was that a question for
Yeah,
you? I'm just thinking
I've been thinking about your bees
Sorry.
and them starving, not having,
Yes.
you know, no honey, and then it got a lot better, and there was a lot more flowers and sunshine and
It
butterflies.
started off well to begin with, and they were producing plenty of pollen, and it was doing really well. But then they had to start eating it because they got cold. And once they've dispersed, they don't go back into the little huddle when it gets cold and they'll die. So the actual hive has been reduced.
And that's over now, it's cold again now, so, yeah, that's such a shame.
Sorry.
So,
No, it's...
Yeah, go back to the insects. I mean, apart from Joe's bathroom.
If you'd have seen it.
But they say insects have declined by, is it 75%
Not
in
in
the
my
last
bathroom.
50 years?
yeah.
Is that a
So they
direct
love-
link with the swallows and things going down and the insects?
Yes.
Because I mean, you never get insects on your windscreen then
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
true.
when you're driving.
that's one of the massive things, but it's not even a double-edged sword. It's a triple-edged sword and a whack on the head when it comes to, because of the top of the food chain. Any disturbance at the bottom of the food chain will just, that pyramid will start to fall apart. So it's not just birds, it's things like bats. So I work a lot with bats. And this year again, because it's been so wet, the amount of bats coming out, I'm a bat carer, and the amount of bats coming in that are starving has massively increased.
Yeah, we haven't still got bat boxes and we haven't seen much.
Activity's
Action.
been much
We used
reduced.
to go outside and eat.
True.
But we're not had so much of that.
No.
And we had that one here that
We
came out in
did.
the
We
day.
got one in the cottage, it's just above the door.
It waited till the Wildlife Trust was here.
Yeah.
And then it came out and did a little circuit for us, but in the middle of the day.
Yes.
And he was
well,
saying it's
we
probably
were
because it's
just
hungry.
Yes.
hungry,
Is that Doug?
Yeah,
Doug.
we found Doug, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Doug's brilliant.
It wasn't
No, it wasn't
there.
Doug, sorry.
Was it not?
It was.
No,
who was it?
he's coming next week.
Yeah, who
On-
was it? Who came?
Um,
Adam.
Was it Adam?
Adam, yeah, from, Wildlife Trust. Adam?
Or was he
No,
from the
from
Keep
down
Wheels
south.
Tidy?
Ah.
Uh,
I was going to say, oh, that's I'm Ceredigion, that's where I am. Oh no, Doug is absolutely fantastic.
yeah, we're having him next week.
What's he coming to speak on? Is it?
We've
Master
got two
Tilleries.
presentations, but we can only do one. So it's basically habitats, all the surveys that have been done, and what have we got here in Ceredigion. Where he's coming back to do veteran trees later on. Yeah.
So
Come and listen if you want.
I think I might.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Yeah, you're very
One of my volunteer jobs is chair of the Wildlife Trust group, so Doug and I are kind of talk together. I'm also an ancient tree recorder as well, so yeah, I'm a little bit nature mad.
That sounds what you do in your spare time.
Pardon?
What do you do in your spare time? Nothing.
Everything just if it's got nature on it, then So yeah, again, this was kind of one of my kind of pet things. It was kind of, well, I've got a spare couple of hours every week. It's something that I can do, something that's interesting. There was funding money going. Free money is going, especially from the government. I'm going to take it and I'm going to use it to do good things for nature. So one of the ways that you can get involved with the project is, we don't really do social media that much, but we are active on Facebook, which is where we sort of try and post information. It has been quite quiet over the summer. We need to sort of get that back up and running again. But then we also have the leaflet, which I think I passed out. I have absolutely tons of those leaflets, so if you wanted to take them for anything or give them on to people, then that would be great. Our email address is on there. That's probably the best way to get in contact with us, because we're up for coming to check out your house, see where you think you'd like to have an S-box, or even chat to other people about what they might be able to do.
What are other potential sighting spots other than on your house?
What do you have in mind?
Well, I don't know, only we live in a listed building,
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes then there are issues about where
Yes.
we can put. We've got a lot of land, a lot of trees.
Mhm.
How high do things have to? How high do they have to be? Could they be on? I don't know. For instance, is a sort of a summer house in a garden? Is that too low? How high do they have to go?
So, the internet will tell you at least 3.5 metres, but that's a lie. They say at least 3.5 metres on a north-facing elevation, but that is just not true. They will nest generally the height of a high dormer bungalow or under the eaves of a second-storey building is where I've had them.
Is there any point in putting them onto trees? Or
I think there is, because they are originally tree nesters. I think there are, obviously not maybe with this type of box,
no.
but I know peat boxes do have a design that is more vertical, which I think would work for trees, and that's something that I would love to try, because especially if you used a caller to maybe bring them in, because at first they might be a little bit just kind of like, ooh, we've not done this for a while, but I think it's something that would definitely work, and in fact I'm actually going to research that.
Because we were about to put up a barn owl box and I've identified the right kind of tree facing the right direction with the right. So we've got trees,
Yes.
we've got land and space, but it's identifying what bird boxes should go in what locations if they're not sort of
Yeah.
right at the house.
Oh, that has fantastic potential. I mean, if you wanted to send me an email, I'd be more than happy. I mean, we don't have the funds for that at the moment, but next round we're going to go for a couple more, boxes that are slightly more specialist for ideas like that, because I think, again...
We're in a situation where we've got to put more, we would do it anyway, but we've just had planning permission to take down a garage and create a new extension. And part of the planning, which is fascinating and was very interesting to us, part of the planning conditions now come saying we have to put up bird boxes.
Yes.
But it's looking, we've got, you know, the great tick boxes, those kind of boxes, and we're putting up the barn owl box, which we would do anyway, but it would be interesting to look at locations for different types.
I'd love to be able to help you with that. Because again, that's literally what I do for my job. I'm the person that writes the report that sends to the council. So I think that would be great, and I'd be able to send you a couple of designs that I have in mind. Because thankfully, there are so many different designs out there, so many different materials that you can choose from.
And we spent the summer watching the swifts above our.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, there have been a lot of swifts around. I don't know quite where they're nesting, but there have been a lot of swifts above our garden and our field and things. So
that's fantastic.
They're obviously around in the area somewhere.
Okay. Oh no, that would be great. Please send me an email, because that sounds absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I mean, if you're Facebook inclined, we are on Facebook. Otherwise, the email address is the best way to contact us. I'm umming and ahhing about perhaps doing a newsletter, but we haven't had anything newsworthy to report just yet, because it can take a couple of years for swifts to take on the boxes. So it's kind of like a long-term project. But you know, we've started now, and that I think is the most important thing.
Naomi, the email that we've been using to communicate, is it alright to pass that
Yes,
email
of course. I mean, you can use my personal
okay.
email, you can use that email. My personal email
I'll
is just
send
kind
it
of...
out to everybody.
Yeah. All right, fantastic. And that was the end anyway. So thank you very much.